Hey everybody, I am going to bake a cake today. I think that we have to celebrate our time together, and so I thought let's do a little bit of baking and just have something to celebrate, okay? So I'm going to do one of my favorite cakes. You do it in a pan. You can do it all year long and just change the fruit. And so I'll just get started and I'll just talk, as we go. So you can do it in a cast iron skillet. You can do it in a springform pan. You could do it in like an au gratin dish, the oval dish, anything you want. You want it to be about the size of a 9-inch pan, or if it's a little bit deeper, that's okay too. And you could just use I'd stick with around a 9-inch. That's the best. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get fancy. My daughter's coming home, and I want to put it on a cake, like a pedestal cake platter. So I am going to turn it out and then turn it back over so that I have it just sitting there. So I'm going to use a regular cake pan. When I bake, I always use parchment. So I have folded it, and I'm folding it in fours, and then, I don't know if you can see this, but I've now folded it into an airplane. I measure the thing like that, the pan, and then I'm just going to cut this so I have a nice circle, or to be easy on yourself, you can also buy cake liners that are, it's too fat, that are already cut for specific sizes. So I'm just going to trim this down a little bit, like so. Okay, I never butter and flour the pan because now you have to wash it. It's just a hassle, and this parchment paper is perfect. Works really well. You can put a knife and run your knife around the outside of the pan when the cake is done. Bam, easy, okay? So this is a super simple, you don't need a fancy mixer or anything. Super simple cake. It's gonna be just 2 bowls. So first I'm going to get my dry ingredients ready. I have a whisk and I have ground almonds. You can use the ground almonds that have been skinned, or for example at Trader Joe's they have ground almonds that they leave the skin on. It's quite a bit less expensive, and it actually makes it look really rustic. So, why not? You could use that. And then, so I have the almonds in here. I need 2 teaspoons of baking powder. I have the salt already in there. So I stir my baking powder around so it's not all cakey. And then I just, drag it along the edge. So we got 2 teaspoons of baking powder. If you don't bake a lot, everything settles. So you want to fluff it up. So what I'm using here is I'm going to use spelt flour. It's from 1 Degree. I really like this company because they sprout all of their wheat. So we were talking about soaking and sprouting, so it's easy to digest. And they have all sorts of heirloom wheat. And it's organic, non-GMO, etc. So they have really interesting wheat. It's kind of fun to fool around. Every wheat has a different flavor. So if this were in my my container where I keep my wheat, where's my cup? So I'm using spelt, mainly because this is all I have left, which is about what I need. And I just thought, we'll do that, okay? So I always stir my flour, fluff it up with a fork. If I haven't baked for a while, it just gets really condensed. And then I add it to my measuring cup, like this. See, and kind of peek it up over the top like that. I don't tap it down because then the flour's gonna settle and we're gonna have too much flour and your thing will be dry, or cake or cookies. And I just go like that, okay? So you want it to be really light. Ideally, recipes have measurements and you use a scale, and then you're always getting just the perfect right amount. So I give it a really good stir, mainly because I want the baking powder to be really well mixed. Now, if you're going to do a white cake, something fancy, you would sift all this and just make it really perfect, but this is simple. Simple, but it's really, really delicious. Okay, so that's that. And then we are going to, so in here I have My sugar, you can use half a cup to about a cup of sugar. I use organic pure cane sugar. You could also substitute about half a cup of honey. That'll work too. It'll be a little bit more moist, so it changes the texture a little bit. And then I'm going to add some orange zest, like that. And I have to add my, okay, I gotta make sure I'm adding the right amount. Okay, I'm gonna add cardamom, and the recipe calls for cinnamon, that's too much. Cinnamon, oh gosh, I think I got too much in there. It calls for cinnamon also, but I'm not gonna use cinnamon because I don't feel like it. I don't know. I just think it'll be good with cardamom. So it's flexible. Okay, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just pinch it together with my fingers, and that just really releases all the oil in the orange. And it just, you can smell it, smells really good. Okay, I'm gonna put 3 eggs, and I always crack my eggs on the counter. If you crack it like this, it tends to push the shell in, and you can get little bits of shell in your cake, and you don't want that. So it gets 3 eggs, like so. And then we're going to do the vanilla, teaspoon of vanilla, and then it gets yogurt. You can use, okay, see if you can get that open, so I'll move on. So you can use yogurt or kefir. If you've got kefir, that works really well too. So we're gonna use half a cup of plain whole fat yogurt. And I'm going to use half a cup of olive oil. You could also use melted butter, which would be delicious too. Give it a different flavor, but I really, really love the olive oil in the cake. It adds a really subtle hint of flavor. Okay, and then we're gonna do the vanilla, like that. Okay, we're just kind of messing up 2 bowls, and then it calls for orange flower water. If you have orange flower water, use it. If you don't worry about it. Maybe you should close the window. You can get orange flower water at the Mediterranean market, and it just adds just a beautiful scent. Okay, so just want to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Okay, so we're going to mix this all up. And just want to get the rest out of here. So when I'm baking, I always bring everything to room temperature as best I can. It will help with your blending. If you add, for example, if you've got really cold eggs and you've just beaten butter and sugar really well, and you've got this beautiful fluffy mixture, and then you add the cold eggs will harden up the butter, and it'll become grainy, and everything will sort of separate. So if you just make sure everything's at room temperature, then it goes in the oven, it bakes really well. Okay, I wish you guys could smell this. It smells so good. Okay, so hopefully I have everything in here. I'm going to add the flour. So I add about half of the flour and get it so that it's a nice batter. And then what I like to do for this is let it come to room temperature, or bake. Once it's baked, put it on a platter, and then serve it with creme fraiche. So the creme fraiche is, you've got it in your recipe packets. A cup of cream with a couple tablespoons of kefir, milk kefir, or yogurt, and let it sit out for 1 or 2 days, and then refrigerate it and then whip it just like you would whipped cream, and it just has that little bit of tang. Now it's probiotic. Okay, it's a little too runny. I'm gonna add a tiny bit more flour. Now, normally I would say don't do this, but I think I didn't measure it quite right, so it just needs a little bit. Okay, so it's just a runny batter, okay? And then I'm going to add it to my pan. Now, in the fall, I love to do this with figs. You can also make cupcakes or muffins. I don't know if you want to call it a cupcake or a muffin. But I do this recipe with figs, plums, apples, really nice with apples. And what you can do just to sort of spruce it up a little bit at the end is you can brush the top of the cake and brush the fruit with a little bit of melted jam, and that'll give it that really shiny, you know, glistening kind of look. Or you can just sprinkle it with powdered sugar. That'd be good too. Okay, so I have all of this summer fruit, and I just like to do it, I don't know if, I think you have to bring it over here. I just like to make it look really rustic. So I'm just gonna add this fruit. I'm just gonna pack this with fruit and kind of stand them up and, you know, make it look really kind of funky. And like that. I've got cherries, so I've got some yellow cherries, I've got red cherries, and I'll show you what I do. So for, here we go. For the plums, I just go around like I'm maybe cutting an apple, and I pop them out. I don't try and take the seed out at all. It takes too much time. So you just kind of go around the seed. Okay, like that. That's a little too thick. Okay, we need more fruit. And then for the cherries, make sure you don't have a really good blouse on, but I just one at a time, just kind of go like that and break the cherries apart. Kind of, or if you have a little cherry pitter. So I have lots of cherries in here, and maybe I'll do some of the cherries upside down and some of them right side up, like that. Okay, I think I'll keep adding a little bit. So I'm gonna bake this. I'm gonna take it out of the oven and let it cool completely. Put a knife around the edge. I'm gonna flip it out upside down onto a plate, and then I'm gonna get my platter and flip it back. But like I said, if you do it in a cast iron skillet or something like that, it looks really nice just served just like that. And I'll post a picture on Instagram and Facebook, and so you can see what it actually looks like. Okay, this one has the stem on it. Okay, so we're gonna stick it in the oven. I use a toothpick, just the old-fashioned way. Stick it in the center. I always, if the recipe calls for bake for 35 minutes, I always bake for 28 minutes, 30 minutes, and start testing it to see if it's done. It should spring back and the toothpick should come out clean, and that's it. Simple, simple. Okay, so I'll send you the picture.